And a couple of years ago, I made a film called Peace on Both Sides of the Gate, which is about near death experience. I wish I could have one of you guys or gals say, I have some concrete evidence. And she was like the fourth person I interviewed. She goes, James, I can do that for you.
Today's guest is James Bonato. I met James at the IANS, International Association for Near-Death Studies conference. He is a documentary filmmaker, and he had made a film on NDEs, near-death experiences.
I researched it, and there are millions and millions of people who had NDEs, and there's probably another 2 or 3 million more who don't even report. Some of them had a choice. Some of them apparently didn't have a choice to come back. And who would want to leave this place? But they had a duty and responsibility to give that message of love to us earthlings. All right. And they felt that they needed to come back for their family or whatever and give this message of love, which this world is failing terribly right now.
If you want to learn how I went from being a skeptical atheist who thought there was zero chance of an afterlife to a skeptical atheist who thinks an afterlife is highly probable, come check out my books. WTF just happened. Hi, everyone. Today I am talking to James Bonato, who I met at the IANS conference. So welcome, James.
Glad to be here.
Thank you. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is James Bonato. I'm a videographer. I am a documentary filmmaker. And a couple of years ago, I made a film called Peace on Both Sides of the Gate, which is about near-death experiences. And yes, we did indeed meet each other at the conference. That was a wonderful conference. Oh my gosh, that whole hotel was just filled with love. I could just feel it. And here I am talking to you about my film.
My God, you could feel something there. It was so fascinating. Like I'm not even one who normally feels energies, but something felt different there that I can't quite explain and haven't exactly ever experienced in a room. So like with that many people, it was bizarre and fascinating and wonderful. But let's jump into your film. First of all, I'm really curious, what got you interested in NDEs in the first place to the point you made a film?
Oh my gosh, Elizabeth. I was just sitting around one night, vegging out, looking at YouTube videos, just clicking, and I came across Anita Morjani, who is like a superstar of the NDE community. And I was just watching her video, and my chin just dropped to the floor. I said, oh my goodness gracious. Now, you know what YouTube does, don't you? After it's over, they list other videos for you to watch that are just like the one that you just watched. And I said, yeah, I'll click on another one. And so then I watched Chris Batts's YouTube video. I don't know if you know his story at all. Um, he was he's a fine gentleman, and he was telling the story about when he was a baby, when he was just 6 months old, his mother threw him in a garbage dumpster because she didn't want him.
And this is actually in your film, but go on and tell
That is
people
in my
his
film.
story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And so he had a tough life, and that's when he made an attempt to commit suicide, and that's when he had his NDE. And after I heard that story, the rest is history, babe. I just said, I got to make a documentary film about NDEs, and I studied and studied and studied it, and here we are.
And remind me, you had 5 people. Am I right? Yes.
That's correct.
Yes. And how did you find these people? Did you select them amongst a big group? Was there a common thread that you picked these specific ones?
Heck no. I was researching and calling and emailing and being as polite as I could, and I just kept getting rejected. Nobody was interested, and they didn't return any of my emails. And I found Chris Batts on, was it LinkedIn or no, I found him on Facebook. And he finally responded back to me, and we went back and forth. And he said, oh gosh, all right, I'll talk to this guy. So he called me on the phone, and we talked, and I gave him a couple of my other documentaries filmed just to impress him. And apparently he was impressed, and apparently he had a feeling that, he could trust me, and I won his confidence over. And he said, well, yeah, I'll be in your film. And I said that I wanted four. And so he tried to get me the other three people, and it kind of grew from there. So he kind of was the person who kickstarted it and got started getting me a couple of the other people.
Great. And why do you think so many, or so many that you reached out to, were unopen to coming on and sharing their stories?
I know exactly why they didn't respond to me. Apparently, and I learned this the hard way, in the NDE community, there are a whole bunch of, I guess there are other documentary filmmakers who smile and they shake your hand and they sit and they interview you and they nod, and then they pack up their equipment and they leave, and they make a smear campaign. They go, oh, this person imagines that they're going to another world, or they're making it up, or blah, 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 blah. And they're very, very cautious about documentary filmmakers. And they were cautious about me. I didn't know. But it was Chris who saw through me and saw my genuineness. And he told the other NDEs, this guy is okay. So that's why I kept getting rejected. And then all of a sudden, I hit gold.
Yeah, there is a lot of snideness and dismissal of any of us who are researching this evidence in a way, any other way than just saying it's all absurd. And I don't know why, because I think there is so much amazing evidence. And us researching it, no one's hurting anyone. We're not, trying to pass laws based on beliefs or anything. We're literally just examining, I wouldn't even say beliefs, we're examining data, research, both anecdotal, non-anecdotal, actual laboratory data. I just find it so weird, the some of the responses that are so angry about this instead of curious, or even if you dismiss it, just say, I can't believe that, and move on. I just find it very strange, the anger it generates in people.
Well, gosh, yes, because a lot of the people who had saw my first two film, and actually I made a fourth film, I'm sorry, Peace on Both Sides of the Gate is my third film, but they were like, "Oh, I see you were taken in by this NDE thing about them going into the light." And I said, "Taken in? Is that what you're? Is that's how you describing what I was doing?" No, I researched it, and there are millions and millions of people who had NDEs, and there's probably another 2 or 3 million more who don't even report it because they're scared of what you and I are talking about. They don't want to be labeled a kook or anything like that, and I didn't label them a kook at all. So yeah, that's why you get that response, and I got it myself on the film.
I'm sure I get it all the time about my book and podcast, and I find the anger about it strange. And it's not, I mean, I've been amazed by the amount of people that I've spoken to that say they've had NDEs or have absolutely inexplicable experiences. There's just so much more out there. And people just, you'll be having conversations or reading a book about someone, and they'll just randomly work in, oh, I was in an accident and I had this weird experience once where I died. It just, and that, but they don't go further. They don't write a book or talk about it further. So I just think there's so many more people that have had experiences like this than we even could begin to fathom. And I find that amazing.
You've got to be right, because I mean, I've heard of near death experience all my life. Like, oh, there's a white light, and you go toward the white light, or you go through the tunnel. And I always found it interesting, but I never pursued it until I watched those YouTube videos of Anita Morjani and Chris Batts. And then I was like, wait a minute. There's something to this, and it's darn interesting. And as a documentary filmmaker, it's warranted to have a documentary film made about them. And so here we
I,
are.
I agree. And now, yeah. So, what were your thoughts on an afterlife before making this film?
I didn't have any. I was atheistic, and I never really thought about it. And I still don't have a religion, but I certainly believe in spirit and God and everything now. Because when you get older, okay, I'm in my 60s now, all right, and you kind of just become wiser, I guess. And I didn't think about it back then. and now I do.
Well, you have more losses as time goes on. When I think of my teen years, for example, or college, I really hadn't had any losses that impacted me until I lost my dad, at least not to that level. I'd have peripheral losses, and it's opened up a whole new set of questions. And yeah, I also completely changed my mind researching this. I still consider myself an atheist. I still don't think there's a God, or I don't identify with religion, but I definitely think I never want to say definitely, but I'd say I'm 95% convinced now that there's survival of consciousness. And yeah, which makes
How
me
long?
so happy.
And how long ago was this?
I lost my dad in 2015, October 2015, and then I it just became a year, the first year, just beginning to research all of this, and it just keeps growing and deepens, and the evidence builds upon itself and gets stronger and stronger. And I think when things tend to be fraudulent, after, if you're going to be honest with yourself and not follow a belief-based model, and the further you delve, you eventually come across a catch, or you hit a wall and it doesn't keep growing and building upon itself. But yeah, this just keeps building and building and has so much depth, and that just wow.
It
Yeah.
feels right, doesn't it? It just feels right. It just has answered so many questions because I used to be pretty gosh darn bitter about the world, and I go, well, there's nobody in charge because he wouldn't let this happen. But and it just took so much research and so much talking to other NDEs to understand, there is some basic logic to this, and I understand the logic. No, notice I didn't say I buy into the logic. I understand the logic now.
Would you say you consider NDEs the strongest evidence of an afterlife that you've encountered?
Gosh, that's a good question. I tell you, I had asked. Well, okay, this is how I'm going to answer it. I was doing the interviews, which required me to fly and drive all over the United States because there were five of them. And gosh darn it, Elizabeth, none of them lived in Maryland. One was from Maine and New Jersey and West Virginia and California. I'm all over the place. And as I started to do this, I was trying to answer that question because I wish I could get one of them to really give me some hard evidence for the naysayers out there to sit up and take notice. And it was Sharon Milliman, and a documentary film. There's no script, and you don't plan everything. You don't try and guide people to a certain way. The film does that naturally. And I asked her about that. I says, I wish I could have one of you guys or gals say, I have some concrete evidence. And she was like the fourth person I interviewed. She goes, James, I can do that for you. I can give you a couple. And so she purposely said that to satisfy my cravings about some hard evidence. And she gave me the evidence of the red shoes. Did you hear about the red shoes on the roof?
I did, but I tell our listeners, because I don't know who knows this story and who doesn't.
Apparently, it was in a hospital, and somebody was under the knife, and she went out of her body, and she saw herself on the gurney, and she saw the doctors and the nurses working on her, and she floated out the window, and she rose above, and on the roof of this hospital was a pair of red shoes. And of course she came back, and she goes, there's some red shoes, the red sneakers up there on the roof. And they're like, yeah, right. And somebody went up there and said, here are the red shoes. So is there any more concrete than that?
There is so much concrete. And when you read those reports, Anita Marjani got evidence, and Dr. Bruce Grayson. I mean, that's what, if people are still saying, oh, I wish there was evidence, I wish there was evidence, there are evidential NDEs studied by researchers, and it's still being dismissed. So, I mean, I think you have to really delve in to start noticing the level of evidence, just because it's not in everyday conversation. It's not in every lab you go into, but it's in plenty of universities and labs, such as University of Virginia, which I talk about on here a lot. So, what are your thoughts of the research of Dr. Grayson? Are there any researchers whose work you especially admire?
Dr. Grayson is the one who turned me around and put me in the right direction. That's an interesting story. But when you were saying that, it just dawned on me. I don't care about trying to prove it anymore because I already know. I already believe. I've already done a film on it. I'm not here to say, look, everybody, it's real. I'm not interested in that because I already know. As far as Dr. Bruce Grayson goes, he was the one who set me straight. I was getting rejected. And of course, I saw many YouTube videos of him. And I wrote the guy and I said, can you be in my film? And he was the one who wrote me back and goes, Dear James, you seem like a nice guy. I'm sure you're a nice guy. And I applaud you making a film about the near death experience. However, blah, 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 about the documentary films that he got duped by. And he's saying, I'm not saying that you're one of them, but I don't want to be in your film because I'm suffering right now. I had a documentary film made and they twisted it all around. And when he said that, he actually wrote it to me. It was a very long email. He took the time. He took the time to address me. And after I read that, I went, oh, I'm going to have to change my approach. I'm going to have to start out by saying, I am not a naysayer. I am not somebody who's going to try and make you prove that the NDE is a real thing. I came at it from a different angle. I said, I'm here to let you tell your story, and the audience will decide what they deem as the truth or what isn't. I don't like to to aim somebody a certain way. It just happens. And of course, everybody who's watched the film, like 90% of them are like, I get it.
Yeah, it's a great film, and Ians obviously loved it. They supported you. And what's so sad is the main people, obviously Dr. Bruce Grayson and the NDE experiencers are very hurt when films and media are that snide, but the people who get hurt the most, I would say, I mean, it's not a competition, but another group of people who get really, really hurt, I should say, are everybody, grieving people. Everyone is going to confront grief. And anyone who's skeptical and wouldn't think there'd be an afterlife, like people like me originally, if I feel like there's no way a loss of your father isn't devastating, but if I had known all this existed, the process would have been yeah, again, I don't want to say it wouldn't have been brutal, but it would have been less brutal. And all my life, a certain existential dread I always had would have been lessened. And I mean, I just noticed the complete difference in how I feel as a human living in a world where I think there's an afterlife versus one where I thought there was zero chance. And that's really sad because it's really hurting the majority of people.
You know, I have been trying to convince my wife of this ever since I made the film. And she's a Baha'i. I don't know if you've ever heard that religion. It's not a real popular one. And she believes in an afterlife, and she has all these struggles. And here's what I do to calm her. Okay, on my wall in my living room are four pictures. Okay, the four pictures are is a snapshot from each documentary film that I've made. Peace on Both Sides of the Gate is the third picture on the wall, and it's a picture of the NDEs. And I constantly point to it and I go, you see that picture? You see, let me tell you what this guy said, or let me tell you what she said, or whatever. And I drive home the point, and she's kind of silent about it because she's very hard headed. But I drive home that point weekly.
And yeah. And what of I know you mentioned one of the most evidential stories was the red shoes, which is a famous story, but what do you feel was the most evidential story you heard amongst the five that were in your documentary? Sorry.
Oh, from their personal thing, gosh, it's equal between all five of them because when I sat across from them, when I was sitting in a chair and they were sitting in a chair across from them, I never took my eyes off them. And the cameras are in the background and they're all pointed at the NDEs. And just their manner and their aura on what they were saying, I was like, this ain't BS here. Okay? You feel it. Okay? The details that Peter Panagore went into about his NDE, I was like, this isn't made up and nor is it imagined. Okay? You make that connection. All five of them equally did that.
Yeah, I found all of their stories just amazing. And I also met Peter Panagore, and he's going to be on, or sorry, Pangalore. I pronounced his name wrong, but he's going to be a guest on this podcast too. And yeah, and I know what you mean. You feel there's such a feeling of genuineness from all of them. I saw in your in your sorry, I keep calling it a podcast. I saw in your documentary, and that I saw from everyone I met at the conference.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that makes me ask you, what are some consistencies you noticed amongst all of the people?
Every story on how they got to this place, whatever you call it, the other side, the kingdom, heaven, whatever you want to say it, all of them are uniquely, they have a unique way, but there's similarities on how they get there, the white light and the tunnel and everything like that. And they're all their experience is unique because we are individuals. If I had an NDE and Liz, if you had an NDE, we would have two different stories, okay? Because we're individuals, but they're going to overlap because there's going to be similar things. However, every NDE story comes back with the exact same message that the cornerstone of humanity is love. They all come back with that same message. They all were in this space that was too beautiful to describe. Okay. But some of them had a choice. Some of them apparently didn't have a choice to come back. And who would want to leave this place? But they had a duty and responsibility to give that message of love to us earthlings. All right. And they felt that they needed to come back for their family or whatever and give this message of love, which this world is failing terribly right now. I mean, I wish it was based on hate. We'd be doing a great job. But no, the world is based on love. And these NDEers, they come back and they give this message with love. That is persistent.
Yeah. Yeah. I noticed that from all NDEers across the board. Everyone says that, and mediums say that, and it's really a beautiful message. And now, what I noticed that I've had this multiple times at different levels. As someone who never believed any of this and then researched it, I had what I would call turning points where something would happen. I call them my what the fucks. And it would just be this next level where I would be shocked and then move to the next level of gathering my evidence and thinking there's something going on. Did you have any what I call what the fuck turning points in the middle of your film?
I can't believe that you asked me that question, and I'm going to try and answer it without crying. I'm going to try and answer it without breaking down. I may, because I'm an emotional person. I'm an empath. I feel sorrow and the pain of everybody else. I feel the joy. But oh my gosh, boy, did you ask an incredible question. Yes, indeed. When I was flying and driving all around the country, okay, I was in a deep state of depression. I was in a depression in my life that I've never experienced before. I had an atrocious thing done to me. It was the most unfair thing that has ever been done to me in my entire life. And I was wounded and I was hurt and I was,
And that's your other documentary, right? That you talk about that?
yes, the film that came right after that is called Running with a Covert Narcissist, which is a drastic thing which happened to me while I was making Peace on Both Sides of the Gate. I was going through the pain of a covert narcissist who was in my life for 5 years, and I experienced hate, and I actually didn't even know that I had this hate in my body. I didn't know I was capable of hating two specific people. So here I am driving and flying around the United States, and I'm about to meet five people, Elizabeth, back to back to back to back to back overflowing with this message of love. And I was like, I looked up at this guy and I said, did you plant this a documentary film in my lap for a reason? I mean, am I rationalizing this? It sure was timely. I was filled with pain and hate, and I was just flooded with love. And I got out of my depression through that film. I'll embellish it just a little bit more. Just a little bit more, I'm going to embellish it. I was interviewing Peter Panagore. Okay, he was in Maine, and he talked about a portion of his NDE, which was a life review, and that's very popular, as you know, a life review. He said he was shown the hurt and pain that he had caused a few people in his life, but he was shown that hurt and pain from their perspective. He felt what he had caused in another person. I'm driving home from Maine, and that's all I can think about. Okay, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can think of three people that I've really hurt pretty bad in my life. I'm going to have to make amends to these three people. God knows how I'm going to find them. But I'm going to have to say, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to apologize. I'm going to have to take the message of this film that I'm making and be in the audience and be affected by it. And in that, trying to make amends to these three people, I got over my depression of what had happened to me. So if you talk about an aha moment, if that isn't a definition of one, I don't know what is. And the day that Peace on Both Sides of the Gate was done, after principal photography was done, the editing was done, the next day I started on Running with a Covert Narcissist because I had to make that film.
And was that the inspiration that day, the inspiration to make the film? Was it something you were always planning to do?
I think that was the last straw in the camel's back that pushed me over to make the film. I was so damn depressed. I didn't know what I was going to do. I almost made the film to get out of my depression, but I really did make that Running with a Covert Narcissist to help other victims of covert narcissists. Okay, because it took me over a year to go from victim to survivor. And then I could make the film once I was a survivor. But it wouldn't have happened without Peace on Both Sides of the Gate. It wouldn't have happened without my NDEs.
And it's also such an important message, but everyone can go check it out. We got to kind of stick to the theme of this podcast because
Yes, we
we
do.
can talk about good and bad. Actually, I will ask you one question because this does tie into NDEs, and I've asked NDE experiencers this, so I'm not sure if you have thoughts on this. What do you think is the cause or reason of bad people and cruelty? Because I've never heard answers the as on the level I've heard from NDE experiencers and some researchers as well. So I'm curious where your mind goes with why some people are horrible to others.
Haven't the slightest idea. I'm so sorry to strike out on that question. I've been told a million times that it's something happened in childhood. My childhood was quite awful, but I came out semi okay. But who knows? I've heard that has to do with parenting and everything like that, but I have no answer.
Secular non NDE experiencer answer. Same as me. I will say the same thing. Yeah. But NDEers always have these deep, sort of complex. I'm like, I'm not there yet. Yeah, I went to kind of very, very toxic schools. So I relate, like, kind of run by a very narcissistic culture. So, but that is a whole other story. But I was just saying, I think that film can help people as well because so many people have, I would say more people have dealt with something like that than not in the world.
It has. It's been one. The response has been absolutely wonderful. Thank God you make this film, James. It has helped me, and it's helped so many people.
Hey everyone! I'm really excited to let you know about the science and spirituality salons I'm now hosting. During these intimate events, a scientifically verified psychic medium will give all of you readings, and I will give a talk on the science and evidence that changed my mind about an afterlife. This will also be an amazing opportunity to get to meet some of you in person or virtually and to share more about all the science and data that transformed my worldview and got me through my worst days. These can be hosted in your home, in a nearby cafe with a private room, or they can even be virtual. I've hosted a few already, and they were really special, fascinating, emotional, evidential. So, if you're interested in getting a small group together over dinner, brunch, drinks, coffee, to learn more about the science and to get evidential medium readings, send me an email at hello@wtfjusthappened.net and put science and spirituality in the title. So now I want to get back to NDEs.
Mhm.
Is there Are there any special lessons? Like, do you want to mention any of the specific people in a specific lesson? Like, I learned this from Chris, I learned this from Jennifer, I learned this from Peter, because I found them all very special people. And as I think I've actually will say that about every NDE experiencer I've met, as well as the researchers, because something seems to go in and change all of us too. Not anywhere near the level of them, but I guess, are there any special lessons you want to, or takeaways or impact of any of the specific people you'd like to share?
I have stories on all five of them. I love these five people so much. I mean, I have made a connection with them on all different levels, but there's one lesson that is collectively, okay? I put out the film, and I love this story. It's my favorite story in the entire my whole life. I was getting the film out, and I had a marketing agent and all this stuff, and what do you call those people that the social media person who put it out there, and this Peace on Both Sides of the Gate just alone on YouTube has over like 46,000 views, but it's shown on other platforms that I can't measure. So a lot of people have seen the film. My favorite response came from a doctor, and this is collectively from really all five of them. The doctor said to me, he goes, "Hey, James, I got to tell you something." And I go, "What do you got to tell me?" He goes, "I saw the film, and of course, I recommended the film to many people. And a patient came in, and he said, 'I'm beside myself. I can't sleep. I am so worried about death. It's to the point where I'm missing work. I can't go to work every day because of this issue I have. It's ripping me apart. Please help me.'" The doctor took her prescription pad and put it aside and said, "I'm not going to write you a prescription for whatever. I'm going to give you this card, which is the card for Peace on Both Sides of the Gate. Because watch this film, come back in a couple of weeks, then we'll reevaluate." The patient came back in 2 weeks, all smiles, and go, "Hey, doc, I don't need any of your drugs. I saw the film. I am back at work now. I am sleeping fine, and I am no longer scared of death because of what I learned from that film." And it just put me into tears that happened. So there's your story on that.
That I love, absolutely love that. And I've noticed, I think as I've been getting older, if I had not found this, I could see as I would hit into like middle age and later middle age, having been a person who was paralyzed by fear of death like that. Luckily, I started to find this evidence in my late 20s, but I had terrible death anxiety when I was younger that I would push away. And I think it's something that could have really it was interfering actually with my life in a way I didn't know, because I didn't know anything else. But now having this comparison, I just notice I move through life in such a different way. And I almost feel like I mean, I joke about it, but I'll be like, I'm immortal, I'm invincible. I mean, all of us are, but there is some feeling of like empowerment, peace, value, a sort of perspective that just has made me able to enjoy my life, and in a way I never knew I could, and in a way I never knew I wasn't. So, do you feel profoundly changed in some way yourself along those lines?
Not so much as Brooke Grove, who kind of just uh, almost verbatim try to communicate what you just communicated to me in the last minute. She feels that way. I never really thought about it from the first place, but I was just so moved about the whole NDE that that was my movement. I was touched.
Yeah, and Brooke Grove is one of the she was the blonde woman in your documentary, correct? And she
Yeah,
dealt with it was she dealt with debilitating illness most of her life, correct? Or her adult
yeah,
life?
yeah. Yeah, she was
Yeah.
given Tylenol, which she was allergic to, and nobody told her, and it had just about wiped her out. She almost wasn't in the film. I wanted to get four people, and she was trying to get back to me, and she didn't. I go, well, I'm set. I have the four people, and then she reached out to me, and I said, oh, I really have all the four people, but I'm always trying to do good things, and I said, you know what? Why don't you call me and tell me your story? And she did, and I remember getting pissed off. I was like, damn it, she's so good, and I've already got my four people. And I said, Brooke, I'm going to have to put you in the film. I don't know how I'm going to do it. And she's kind of, it starts out with the four of them, and Brooke Grove doesn't appear until like two-thirds of the way in. And she doesn't get the exposure as the other four. But boy, does she hit a home run. So I got her in the film that way.
She's just as impactful. I would say the 5 of them are kind of the perfect balance. There's some way that they all, when you put their messages, why can I not speak today? Their messages together, it is it's just this perfect balance. They're all such powerful stories and they're all so unique and they, as we've said, they have a consistency. And
Oh,
so
do you know how hard it was for me to edit them out? You know, I mean, they all talked for hours. I mean, the film could be 6 hours long, but I had to go from back one to other, and I go, "Oh, this is a repeat or whatever." And like, well, this is better than this. It was just pearls of wisdom from start to finish from all five of them, and I had to make it down to an hour. That was hard enough.
how did you do that?
I am a video editor. Which is, by the way, is on the other side of the room, is my edit suite when I do all of my editing. And when I'm in front of my edit suite, all is right with the world, baby. That's where I'm supposed to be. That's exactly what my duty is in life is to do that. And I just I don't want to say the word magically, but I do know how to put together things. I don't know where I got it from, but
You
there it is.
just knew there wasn't a
Hmm.
plan. It just that intuitive. I feel that when I'm writing and editing my book. I get it. It's just I can't really tell you why. It's just like a rhythm or a feeling. I'm like, I love this while writing the first draft, but you just it isn't logical. It's just a feeling. Some things feel right at certain moments more so than others. That was I'm it's so it sounds similar with your documentary editing.
Yeah.
Um, so I want to ask you, do you think NDEs are real? I know you don't think anyone's kooky or lying, but these could be very, very powerful, genuine hearted, deep spiritual experiences that are hallucinations or exactly what the brain's supposed to do to cope with the terror of dying and to cope with the terror of risk of death and unbearable physical suffering. So what are your thoughts on that answer versus it's an actual step into the other side?
My answer to that question is 95% yes, and I'll tell you how I came to that conclusion. I don't know. But in talking to all these NDEs, especially the five that were in my film, they tell me all about that. And they said there is a very, very minute, small part of the NDE population that, uh, uh, they're doing it you know, to promote themselves or something like that. It is extremely small. But I base that, my opinion that I just gave you, on what my NDEers told me. Okay. Now, who am I to say what is right or wrong? I feel it, I believe it, and I feel it inside, but a very, very minute is the answer is no.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not questioning any of their genuineness in the least, but I'm just questioning the interpretation. If it could be just the incredibly profound, genuine, loving, wonderful experience, but just the not just because it's obviously has total profundity, but the answer is a remarkable spiritual experience
Mm.
created by a brain that does not lean towards a brain being non-local, or towards our consciousness being non-local and not created by a brain.
Yeah.
You think it's that our consciousness is non-local and not created by a brain. You think that's the right interpretation, 95% likely?
Absolutely so. And I tell you what, you know what the documentary film and all these YouTube videos can't do? You can't see an NDE or face to face on a documentary film or on a YouTube thing. When I met Sharon Milliman, I was immediately surrounded by love, my whole body. And I can't get that across in the film. I tried to. When you meet, try looking Peter Panagore in the eye and not getting this vibe of like, oh my gosh, who am I talking to? Yeah, that's something that I guess naysayers or non-believers can't get. But if they met them face to face, I bet you something would change.
There was I have to back up everything you said. Of all the things I was expecting to experience and learn at the conference, I something like feeling that energy was not something that even crossed my mind, and it was intense. You feel something speaking to each one. And then the last night, the dance party, just so everyone knows, I love to share this story. I actually wasn't feeling well the last night. I don't do well in air conditioning. It was one of those conference centers, blasting AC everywhere. I was also covering it for social media, so I was working hard. I was having a blast, but physically I was not feeling very well. And one of the NDE experiencers and someone who's very involved in ions, Betty, and I'm so sorry to blank on her last name.
What,
So
what, Guadalupe? I know you're talking about.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
she was an atheist. Yeah, I know all about her.
it is like me. Yeah, she had this remarkable NDE, and she came up to me the last night. Everyone was dancing, and I was like, I would like to, I just don't feel well. And she was like, isn't it amazing? Every person on this dance floor died so they could come together to dance like this. And that was so moving. I was like, I don't care that I don't feel well. I have to make myself dance. So I just got up. I was like, I'll push myself for a song or two. I do not know what happened. I have never physically experienced something like this, but I just felt my whole body heal, and like these crazy sort of vibrant energies through me. I was dancing with like 30 NDE experiencers. I felt completely healthy, completely vibrant, just full of life. Every like bit of just it was like physically walking into some thing as if it poured through me and completely physiologically changed how I was feeling. And I just felt like almost this level of joy that was like almost pushing into me and like bigger than me. It was an incredible experience. It was probably the most fun I've ever had dancing in my life. And then I didn't feel sick. I felt great. I could have stayed up all night. I was like, close the dance floor and close the party. And I was like pushing myself to stay up another half hour before I started dancing. It was, I can't even explain it. And then if anyone wants a little bit of verification to that, they apparently, people who've had NDEs affect electronics. Dr. Janice
Yeah. Oh,
Walden.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's in my movie. Yeah. And
it's like,
shit, because they were begging me to go to that dance. And I was having a dinner with the five of them. They go, you come to the dance. I go, I got a big wedding to shoot tomorrow morning at 10. And I love to dance. And I missed it. And now I'm all pissed off that I missed it.
nope,
Uh,
you're required to come next year now. So,
yeah.
because I'm going to go back after I mean, I want to go anyway for the evidence, but that was like my deciding factor. I was like, I have got to experience something like that again.
Yeah.
And just the love of the people. But I'm sorry you missed it. Now you got to come back. um, I'm just really curious. Wait, first of all, tell what you heard about the electronics too. How is that referenced in your documentary?
I experienced it with I think four. It was either all five of them or four of them. I use a wireless mic, which is actually right over there. I was going to show it to you, but I put a little lapel mic on them, and then it goes through the airways to my receiver on the camera, goes into my headphones and onto the card. Every one of them was a nightmare. And I was like, every once in a while I'll have this at a church or at a building or something like that, but what the hell's going on? And Jennifer Dean says, "Oh, that's us." I go, "What are you talking about? We're the one. We apparently we mess with the electronics." And goes, "Well," and I fixed it, and it happened every time except I think it was okay for Brook Grove, but the other four of them, I was like, "Oh my God, here it is again! What I can't hear," and I would change the frequencies, and yeah, so I experienced it firsthand.
I I always use Zencaster when recording for my podcast, what we're on right now, and I've never had problems. I have had problems when I interviewed people who've had NDEs. Like I had to switch to Zoom actually yesterday because my Zencaster was doing all these weird things even leading up to it. And what was crazy, I was trying to figure out how to solve this. It was just really weird. Like Zencaster sent me like wrong information about how to solve it because they weren't even understanding because it just hadn't happened. So I got on with Brianna Lafferty, who is an NDE experiencer, and I was like, "I'm sorry, I do not know what's going on. I can't find a solution." She's like, "Yeah, probably me." And I was like, "Well, we have to switch to Zoom." What was crazy was she had this beautiful background that sums up her NDE in Zoom, and it added to the video and podcast so much. I was like, that was probably you or your people unknowingly being like, no, we're not using Zencaster, but I'll see. I mean, who knows? I've had problems twice now, only with people who've delved in and had NDEs. So I'll see what happens with the rest.
Yeah.
I'll
But I have a really interesting story, and you reminded me of. You said the lady had the NDE Lafferty had a beautiful Zoom background or something like that. Get this. Listen to this. I'm doing a wedding, and the photographer, his name is Pablo. Good old Pablo, right? Oh my gosh, I hadn't seen Pablo for a while. And he goes, "Man, when was the last time I did a wedding with you, James?" And he goes, "Oh, it was that one with Frenchie." And I go, "Oh yeah, Frenchie." Frenchie is like the greatest wedding videographer, the greatest videographer that I've ever met. And I've met hundreds of videographers in my 35-year career. Frenchie. I said, "Yeah, sure." And he goes, "Well, what's Frenchie doing?" I go, "He retired. He moved to Maine." And I went, and he went to move to Maine. I said, "Oh my God, I have an interview in Maine in 3 days with Peter Panagore. Maine is a big state. Come on." Why don't I call Frenchie? It's just that. And he goes, "This is where I'm going to be on Maine and Wednesday." And he goes, "Oh my God, I live 10 minutes away from there." And I go, "Get out of here." And he goes, "Can you assist me?" He said, "Yeah, I'm free that day. That's 10 minutes from where I live." What are the odds of that? So the greatest videographer that I know helped me film Peter Panagore. I mean, that's an incredible story.
as if some thing is working together. I love that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. hmm
I'm just curious. If you could have an NDE yourself, would you?
I never thought of it. No, I'm fine right where I am. I have no feelings about that. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think it would
You?
depend. It would depend. Yeah, yes, pretty much yes, but not at too big a cost. Like if I had an illness that debilitated me for a couple of years or was potentially terminal and dealing with the angst of that for a couple of years and then having one and being a slow recovery process, no. If I could have one without a long illness and have it be a very quick recovery process, the way a lot of people, that's actually something that I find fascinating, is people's illnesses heal in very unexpected ways and very inexplicably fast. Overall, not everybody, when people have NDEs. If I could have something like that, sure. Like I take the good if I could have
Yeah,
the good part and not the bad. So, which I
we
guess some
can't.
people have if it's instant, like a collapse or heart attack. Yes, I would
Yeah,
have it.
yeah, we can't pick and choose, I guess. But yeah, no, I never thought about it. I was happy just doing a film about it.
And do you fear death now?
Well, I never have felt. I've never feared death ever since I was a little kid.
Yeah.
No, I never have. Um, and this almost in a kooky, crazy way, it almost makes me long for death because what I've heard about the other side, I'm almost looking forward to it. But no, I've never feared it.
There are parts of it I'm looking forward to too. I mean, I'm not trying to speed it up, but there's a lot I'm really enjoying in this life, and I don't feel I'm anywhere near accomplishing what I'm supposed to, but it feels like something I'm really looking forward to in a certain way, like not in a dark way, in a, I mean, I knew it was going to come, I knew it was going to happen, but now it's something instead of dreading, I'm like, that'll just be another really wonderful step. And that's a big
I
difference.
I think my death is not around the corner because I always get a message that says, James, you have so much potential and you're leaving it on the table. It is dormant. You are not doing everything that you can be to change this world for the better. And I feel that I am a soldier. I am a soldier. I'm on a mission, and I don't think that mission is done yet. So maybe
I,
in a couple more documentary films, I don't know.
you've already done a lot. So, but yeah, there's sounds like there's more to do, which it's why
Yeah.
we're here. It's good. It's good that you still feel you haven't done everything at this point. I mean, at 99, maybe that would be a different thing. Maybe hopefully you have done everything. But who knows? I mean, some people live into the early hundreds and are still accomplishing. So, that
Uh,
is one of my priorities. I know there are other things I'm meant to do and accomplish and finish and complete both in my personal life and my business life. So I'm like, I would be very sad to have that interrupted. And
right.
so now I have a question because I've noticed this in myself, and not everybody, but a lot of people who are don't consider themselves like mediums or psychic or haven't had NDEs, like the people that are coming at this from an investigative perspective, like you and me. I've had some weird stuff happen to me personally where I'll usually when I'm around other people like experiencers, NDE experiencers or mediums, things that rarely would happen to me when I'm by myself, but a couple things have happened to me by myself. But have you had any of that? I guess I call it like rub off onto you of weird things happening to you or knowing things or
I am discovering right now what a good interviewer you are. Okay, because I mean, it's incredible that what you're
thank
getting out of
you.
me. Yes, I do, and I don't think that I've ever shared this with anybody. Certainly not online, but you're the first. Okay,
All
yes,
right.
I have a specific one. It was 1980, and it happened very near to where the conference that you and I attended. Okay, around Washington D.C. is a beltway. It's called 495, and there is a bridge that goes from Maryland to Virginia. It's called the Cabin John Bridge. And back in the 80s, it was a very dangerous bridge. It was only 2 lanes. Here I am in 1980. What was I? I was 21 years old. I'm driving across the bridge, and my car starts fuming. The lights go on. There is no shoulder on the bridge. I break down on the bridge, okay? And I try and get over and I'm hugging the Jersey wall or whatever it is you call it. And cars are zooming by me. They're trying to get around me and they're going 55 miles an hour. And I'm like, this is really dangerous. And I couldn't even get out of the driver's side. I got out the passenger side and I opened up the hood and I'm like, what am I doing? I'm opening up the hood. I don't know how some guy pulled. I don't know how he pulled over. He pulled over, went right in front of me, and I turn around and he says, "You need some water?" And I said, "Yeah, I think it's my radiator." He pours it in. He pours the water into the radiator, and it cools down. He goes, "Well, let me see if it starts up." It starts up, and I look at the guy, and he's pulling away. I'm like, Who was that angel? 20 years later, I'm me and my wife are just watching, we're just chilling, watching TV, and it said, "Your guardian angel," blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. And he goes, they come out of nowhere, they save you, and they disappear as quickly as they come. They look very, very plain, and it's very, very short. You don't really even get it. Says, "Oh my God, I met my guardian angel in 1980 on the Cabin John Bridge. That's got to have been him. It's to a T." And that is something that I've always held on to. You're the first person to know that.
I love wow. That's thank God they were there that time.
I didn't think about it at the time. I was 21-year old. I didn't know anything about life. And after I says, Jesus, that was really lucky that that guy was that. Maybe it wasn't luck. Maybe that was, I had a little help.
Do you think he was a regular person that was being influenced by your guardian angel, or do you think, and the other side looking out for you, do you think it was actually he was not a real person? He sort of appeared the way you'll sometimes hear someone in an accident will report a person who held their hand while they until the ambulance came, and then no one else saw that person. Do you think it was something like that, or do you think it was a regular person being influenced by guides looking out for you on the other side, or loved ones or whatever?
I think it was my guardian angel.
That's beautiful. I
Yeah,
love that's an amazing story.
yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah. God knows if it's true. I don't
yeah.
know.
Who
Every
knows?
once in a while, every once in a while I'll talk to him. I feel that he's, you know, protecting me and stuff like that. And I says, "Hey, remember 19?" And every time I go over that bridge, I wave hello to him. I go, "Remember right over there where you saved me?" I pass it all the time. And yeah.
Really nice. And you remember exactly what he looks like and everything,
No,
or
he was very. I barely. He was very, very plain, very nondescriptive, just like they tell you, because your guardian angel looks as plain as can be. They have no identifiable feature. I remember it was a guy, and he was wearing. That's all I remember. He was a guy. He came up. I mean, I turned around and goes, "Do you need water?" I goes, "Brother, where did you come from? How did you pull over?" I couldn't believe it. Yeah, very nondescript.
now people who have NDEs come back with some interesting differences, knowing that everything's about love, ability to affect electronics, some have psychic abilities, don't fear death. If you could pick one of, not, it doesn't even have to be any of the ones I listed, just any of the consistencies that people who have had NDEs come back with, what one would you pick?
I was just so God. There's so many of them, but I have to put Chris Batts at the top of the list, probably because that was the one who got me to make a documentary film. But the way he went from all the stuff that happened to him to the loving person that he is quite amazing. I have to put that one at the top of the list.
His story was his early life story was brutal, and then his change, and he just glowed. He was at the conference, right?
Yeah, sure, he
Yeah,
was.
I remember. I think I remember him. I
Oh,
it was a huge conference, so I don't remember everybody. I remember some of the people, but we're all five there.
yes, all five of them were there. I made my speech, and I had all five of them sit in the front row. And I made my speech. I don't know what it is about me. I love making speeches. I don't know where I got that talent from. But at the end of the thing, I go, by the way, folks, they're right over there. The five of them are sitting right there. Please stand up. And they all stood up. Yeah, they're doing, and there's this wonderful picture of the six of us. And it's like the most beautiful picture I've ever, it's my favorite picture of all time. Yeah, they were all there. A couple of them were going to be there anyway. Peter Panagore was going to be there, Sharon Millman, and I kind of had a small little role in getting a few of them there, but all five.
Uh
Yeah.
I'm sad I missed your presentation. That is one of the only things I didn't like about the Ions conference was it was so hard to choose. There were piles of events at the same time. So some of the ones I don't even remember how I picked, or it would be like six things that I wanted to go to all of them on at the exact same
Mhm.
time. So, and that always was sad. I was like, oh, but I want to go this as much as this.
I will send it to you because I filmed it. You know that I'm a videographer, right?
I heard. Oh,
Yeah, I filmed it. Um, of course, it was unmanned cameras and it's a little far away, but
okay.
I will send it to you.
Perfect. Thank you. So great. Is there a link to it too that we could share in the show notes, or is it not something that could be seen
Yes,
by
it's
the
there's a
public?
link on the website on
Okay.
the. Yeah, I have well, first of all, I have a website for my business, but I also have individual websites for some of the individual films, and I have a website for Peace on Both Sides of the Gate, and it's under there's a lot of different tabs. It's under media, but it's peaceonbothsidesofthegate.com, which is really long to write out, peaceonbothsidesofthegate.com, www. And you can see the film there. You can see the trailer. You can also see the unedited versions of my 5 NDEs and their unedited raw version of what they said. And there's a media page. There's a whole bunch of things on there.
Oh, perfect. I mean,
But
I didn't know I could have seen unedited. I watched the film, obviously, but I didn't watch all the unedited. I'm going to go back and watch that because that's probably amazing.
I put that on there as an afterthought, like as you know what? Why don't I put on the raw footage? Maybe a few people will click. Somebody. Oh my God! They get thousands and thousands of hits. I had no idea of that. Yeah,
I, I'm excited to watch that.
I'll
Yeah.
send it to you.
I feel like we've kind of gotten to everything I wanted to talk to you about. Is there anything you want to add that I didn't ask you? Any message or takeaways you want our audience to have?
We covered it all.
Perfect. So, thank you. I will be seeing you next year at the conference again, it sounds like, and you'll have to go to the dance party. And where I know you've mentioned your website, but just any little reminder where our listeners can find you, follow you, watch your documentaries.
Sure, you can see all the documentaries on my website, which is www.jamesbonatovideo.com. That's me, James Bonato. So it's all one word, jamesbonatovideo.com. And I have tabs, and obviously people will want to click on the one that says documentary films, and you can see all 4 documentary films.
To get more information on what the fuck just happened, go to WTFJustHappened.net. There you can order my book, WTF Just Happened, A Sciencey Skeptic Explores Grief, Healing, and Evidence of an Afterlife. You can learn all about how I came to conclude that there most likely is an afterlife, but you can also learn about the early stages of my grief and the amazing, fascinating people I met along the way. You can read about how much I harassed the mediums and scientists trying to get evidence to see if the mediums were cheating and see if what everyone was saying actually was true. You can also subscribe to our newsletter to stay updated on any new developments and any interesting new what the fuck updates. So if you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. It makes such a difference, especially for a new podcast like this one. And if any of you have had a crazy what the fuck yourself, have any questions, feedback, or just want to say hey, reach out on either Instagram at WTF_just_happened_, or email me at hello@WTFJustHappened.net. I love hearing from all of you. It makes my day hearing your stories and questions and feedback and all of it. And remember, you don't have to draw any final conclusions as you wonder, what the fuck just happened?